Panoptica, Cisco's cloud application security solution, provides end-to-end lifecycle protection for cloud-native application environments. It empowers organizations to safeguard their APIs, serverless functions, containers, and Kubernetes environments. Panoptica ensures comprehensive cloud security, compliance, and monitoring at scale, offering deep visibility, contextual risk assessments, and actionable remediation insights for all your cloud assets. Get more information at securityweekly.com/Panoptica. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Ben Carr. Follow Security Weekly Productions on LinkedIn for exclusive show clips, insights, and updates across our organization. Stay connected with our hosts and fellow community members and join the conversation that's shaping the future of cybersecurity. All right, gentlemen, it's been a long time since we've done articles. We had a ton of RSA conference interviews that we've been playing. So we haven't covered articles for a while. So I had plenty to choose from this week since it's the first time we've come back. But I tried to be a little picky, right? I didn't want to cover stuff that was too old, that was kind of out of date. But I had a really good selection. So I started with the boardroom ones. There's a couple on the board side, right? And so this first article is around the boardroom blind spot, which we've talked about a lot on this show, right? The lack of cybersecurity expertise on the board. Now, this article talks about some recommendations, but Jason, as you and I always debate, I'm not sure the order is correct.
I don't think the order is correct, and I don't think there's enough. I mean, This is very, very high level. And what I'll say is that there's a lot of assumptions here within this article that I would definitely like to challenge. I mean, there are some aspects of the article that talk about the CISO as if they had a stroke of a pen type decision making capability or accountability within an organization. I mean, one of the aspects that really rang out to me was making sure that you can level set your board and level up your board. And it made a comment in there around the fact of does your board have enough cybersecurity expertise? And if not, it may be time for a new board. It was like a comment, something like that, or an update to the board. Well,
okay, good luck with that.
Can the CISO really do that? I don't think so, right? So
no, but I would agree with you, Jason. I don't think a CISO is going to have the swing at all to be like, hey, we need new board members, right? However, I do think as an industry, we need to have a conversation about this, right? Like if you look at, I just got QT certification from Digital Directors Network, right? There's some stuff going on with NACD. I'm a big believer in we need more representation at the board, and it's not just cyber, right? So one of the interesting things we had discussion about was just tech in general. And if you look at Fortune 500s, there was an interesting stat that came out that said that I think it was, there's only one company that has significant representation on a technical side at the board, and it's General Motors, right? So they have, I think, more than 3 people on the board. And one of the discussions at Digital Directors Network was you really can't just have one, right? Because if you have one, it's like you're speaking to yourself. There's no one else hearing. You're not having that conversation. 100%. If you have 2, you're kind of having a conversation between yourselves, and still it's like people off at the end of the table having a combo, right? You really need 3. And I kind of believe that you need a momentum to have people who kind of understand it. And at 3, not all of them have to be cyber, right? Maybe one has different experience in AI, one has general IT tech, maybe data, and one has cyber. And you can start to have this conversation that's elevating the board, and that would be different, right? That would then create momentum and change. But the fact that we don't have that,
make this article totally different.
Right?
That would make this article totally different.
No, I know.
That's
100%. Where I think that's where we need to start. It still boggles my mind, right? And I equate it to the whole financial issue of not having people who could read a balance sheet, 20 years ago. Surprising to me still, but we need that. That's foundationally the change that needs to happen. And I question this, and then there's another article, the next article in here. You didn't bring it up directly, Matt, but I questioned the Supreme Court ruling with regard to Chevron deference.
Right.
I think that may have some negative effects, right? Because now it's going to be a free for all of there's no legislation, so screw you. No one can make any rulings, right? It's just
right. No, I mean,
sorry, I
Chevron...
went off on a tirade there because this one lit me up.
No, but good. Because I look at this and I'm like, okay, yes, you need to kind of level set with your board, but you as a CISO can't level up your board. That's a conversation that happens from the top down. It's not coming from the CISO, right? But I think this conversation has to be
in front of the board.
I know
from shareholders, right? The shareholders actually have to have concern, and that's one of the weirdest things. We talk about SEC guidelines and everything else. What long-term effects has there actually been for a lot of these companies that have had issues? There haven't been. They kind of go down and then they rubber band back, and then everything's normal and we don't care anymore, right?
Right.
Strange.
Right. Yeah. And then he talks about risk quantification, which I fully believe in, right? That because these guys are business people, right? They understand dollars and cents. And if you're not quantifying risk, so I agree with that, right? But you just brought up something that I wasn't going to get into necessarily, but the Supreme Court decision around Chevron is very interesting because there's already some articles coming out saying, does the SEC have the ability to enforce cybersecurity regulation down on companies, right? That could unwind all the things that have been positive for the industry.
Yeah. And I was trying to explain this to another person about because they're like, what does this Chevron thing mean? And I was like, well, it's actually interesting because I actually think there's a lot of impact from a cyber perspective because we're woefully behind in legislation. There's not a lot of understanding at a congressional level with senators. And so that's going to lead to these vague laws, which is exactly what Chevron tried to get away. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of it in other areas, but I think in this area, in cyber, it's going to be really challenging and could have a huge effect.
Yeah.
It could.
Agreed.
Actually, there's a couple rulings out there. The FCC around non-competes, which could also impact parts of our industry as well, are also now all of a sudden kind of tossed up in the air. These are things where we've made some momentum in certain areas because regulators put them in place. But if the regulators can't do it and you need a law from Congress, good luck with that.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. Good luck getting a law that you're actually going to look at and be like, that is a bad law. That that went exactly the reverse of what we were hoping for.
Yep.
Yeah. Step forward, 2 steps back. Hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Right. So we do tie in this conversation to the cyber defense, bringing the boardroom to the cyber battlefield. Some of the work that MasterCard and Night Dragon, a few others have done to try to educate the board, right? Because again, only 12% of S&P 500 boards include a cybersecurity specialist. To your point, and how many?
And if you really dig into that, Matt, what is a specialist? They can spell cybersecurity. It really falls apart really quickly when you actually look at what their expertise actually is. It's not. You went to a course that doesn't cut it, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, though, I think the push that they're having to bring all of the stakeholders together when it's public sector, industry. I mean, Jen Easterly's doing a great job at CISO trying to bring everybody together. I think the Cybersecurity Board Academy can help move the needle, can help influence. I think that's the biggest piece is influence and trust. And if we can start moving the needle there, I think it can help maybe, mitigate some of the risk we were just talking about, because the more we can influence, the more we can change hearts and minds. And that's going to be the key.
Yeah, agreed. Next article, Navigating the CISO Role, Common Pitfalls for New Leaders. Now, this is a continuation because the original article was published in, I think, 2013. And this is kind of the update for 2024.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to read kind of the original kind of premise behind what some of those common pitfalls were to now and what's shifted and what's changed in the last 11-ish years since he wrote the original article.
Yeah. I mean, some of them hold true. We just talked about it in the previous segment, right? We talked about do not be the CISO of no. Well, guess what? Still rings true, right? I mean, we literally just having that conversation now. I fully believe in having that professional network, right? Yeah. I mean, I've talked about it on the show all the time. Have that personal board of directors, those mentors, right? And just having those folks around you, those are things that you have to be doing to be able to have a group of folks who you can really talk to candidly, right? And have those candid conversations around struggles and advice on strategies, and just have that group around you that you can trust.
Yeah, that's super important as trusted advisors. Yeah, you've
Mm-hmm.
got to have some way to reach out to people who
Yeah,
who will give you the honest answer, even if it's painful for you sometimes.
Yeah.
that's right.
And I think focusing on the people part, which has not been a strength of CISOs in the past, right? We
Mm-hmm.
focus a lot on technology. A lot of us came through the technology ranks, but we can't forget about the people side of this. We can't forget
Right.
about the human element is a huge vulnerability, right, for
Yeah.
us. And so we can't forget about the people side, not only of security, but also the relationship side.
Yeah, no, 100%. I did add one in here, that I may suggest to Dan in the future to add to maybe 2025, and it's don't be afraid to challenge the process.
Mm.
The way we've always done it as an excuse or an answer back to you as the CISO is garbage.
Yeah.
And treat it as such. Challenge the process. Continuous improvement and growth mindset is the only way to lead. The only way.
Because we've been doing things pretty much the same for 15 to 20 years. We haven't made a ton of
Mm-hmm.
progress.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
are
we're
we
killing
sure
it.
we're
We're
doing the
killing it.
right stuff?
So that's a big one for me. Challenge the process. Go into it, challenge the process.
Got it. Next one, gaining and retaining security talent, a cheat sheet for CISOs. Now, I love the terminology in here. Retaining.
Retaining.
Right?
That's right.
It's employees want to be,
Yeah.
anyways.
Right. No, exactly. And I mean,
Yeah.
we've talked about it on the show before. It says one of the most controversial takeaways is that you don't necessarily need technical qualifications, right? We've talked about it here about attitude and aptitude. Attitude and aptitude is key. You guys know I like to plant seeds. I'm a farmer versus a hunter,
Yeah.
right? And really having those folks who have the attitude and the aptitude that you can push forward is huge.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
how do you do that, right? Like, how do you source and figure out, like, what are the criteria that
Yeah.
your
right.
staff are looking for to be engaged, excited, and retained, right?
Right.
And how do you do that? Like, I think Dell made a huge error in saying, "Hey, everybody come back in the office." Like 50% of those people said
Yeah. Right.
no.
Right.
Then they said, "Well, hey, you're not going to get promoted. You can't move jobs." And 50% of those people said, "I don't care."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Right. Yeah.
that's
And I mean, the
that's
article
the
the
masses
article called
speaking.
it out well too.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, the article called it out well too, because it says, unconsciously, so that unconscious bias, a lot of CISOs came from a technical background, and they don't want to. They want to hire mini me's, is what they
Right.
said. For me, that's I call it groupthink.
Yeah.
We don't want groupthink. We want the opposite of groupthink.
Yeah.
Right. So really hire on the attitude and the aptitude side.
Yeah, the other challenge I'd like to call out in this one is, do we really need 4 million more cybersecurity professionals? Because
I know.
I'm not.
Is that a real number?
Is that a real
Yeah.
number? Like, we've been throwing this big number around for years.
The
But when
market
you
doesn't
look
feel
at
like
the
it.
number of open positions and the hiring that's going on, Ben, as you know,
And
like,
some folks who've lost their job within the last 4 or 5 months.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Let's look at that.
is that number really true, or are we throwing a
Right.
bunch of FUD around here, which obviously we
Exactly.
don't believe in here, but we
Mhm.
keep seeing this number go from 1.5 million to 2 to 2.5. Now they're saying 4 million. Well, if it's 4 million, then why aren't we seeing the hiring in this industry to close that gap? I don't know that number is real.
Right. And I mean, guys, there was a time where we sat back and we looked at those numbers. It was probably around 3 million plus or whatever, where we were like, all right, I can see that being real. This we can kind of feel this a little bit in the economy. But right now, no way.
No way.
I think
not feeling it. No
it's
way.
definitely going to take a rebound in the economy for that to happen. I think certainly the election's in play. Like, a lot of people are trying to figure out, like, where
Mhm.
things going to go. So I mean,
But
I don't look this to
Exactly.
stabilize much until early next year. And then where will it go?
Right.
What will happen? Like, if the economy's the same and it's
Mhm.
flat, like, I don't think there won't be 4 million openings out there. And the openings that I've talked to a bunch of people who have said, yeah, like, they're ghost openings out there that aren't actually real openings, right? And so I
Right.
Mhm.
think it's a little worse than people actually realize it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in order for a rebound, I think we have to bottom. I'm not sure we bottomed yet,
No,
guys.
not yet.
When I look,
No, agreed.
when I read the
Agreed.
financial and look through some of the different projections, I think we get through the election, then we burst the bubble.
Yeah.
And then we bottom, and then we come out. So
we have to get through the election stress. Yep, 100%.
Well, and I don't think we see the bottom until post-election stress, which is early next year. Then we can start to rebound. Then do we see these positions open up? I don't know, but yeah, I definitely don't see them right now.
Well, I mean, a lot of it's going to be muscle memory after that too, right? If it is after the election and organizations want to know what they're working with, right? It's going to be muscle memory because we've operated so long with keeping as much cash on hand as we possibly can, right? And not overspending and making sure we have a little bit of that buffer available, right? And I don't think we're going to let go of that muscle memory quickly.
No.
It's not like it's going to be floodgates opening.
Yeah, definitely not. All right, let's finish up with some leadership and communication. So this next article, 10 leadership qualities you must look for. This is the writer's recommendations on the kind of the 10 leadership skills. There's a couple interesting ones in here. So
very. And I mean, I like I always do, I reordered them. And I put them in order of priority. Just so you guys know my order. This is the Albuquerque order, right? So love yourself is number one. If you're not treating yourself well, you can't treat others well. You're not going to operate effectively or efficiently. My number two is help others, right? And really, I put my 2 and 3 together. Help others, add value to everything, because I think that's they go together really well, right? And I mean, for folks who've seen me on the show for the last 6 years or so, smile always, right? I mean, at the end of the day, my eyes are waking up in the morning. I'm living in the best country in this world. I have wonderful family. I have great colleagues. I'm going to smile every day, and it's one of those scenarios where you just have to.
And Jason, if you do those, the rest of this starts to come.
Everything else falls into place. Everything else falls into place, right? Because in all honesty, and one of the things I put, just so you guys know, I put at the end, make money always. I put that at the end. That's the last, if it's even in the list, right? Because I love to build wealth, not riches. But if you do all these other things really well, the money's going to
it'll follow.
The money's going to follow.
Agreed for sure. And look, when I went through kind of my first startup and didn't make money, watched that baby kind of die, it did put something into me to be like, yeah, you have to, but you can't just make that decision and all of a sudden it happens. You've got to do all these other things, Jason, that you listed out to put yourself in a position for that to happen. Right. But it's an outcome if you're doing the other qualities well.
100% agree.
Yeah. Last one is ask better questions to be a better leader. I think this is absolutely true.
I love this.
Yeah, this was a good article. Yeah.
I absolutely love this article. So, I mean, I don't know. They kind of pointed it out toward the end of the article, but have you guys ever read The Coaching Habit, the book, The Coaching Habit?
I have not.
So it's a book. It's circa like 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. But, I read this book and it really changed my view on a leader in the way I lead. I said earlier, I'm a farmer, right? I like to plant seeds. I'm not that leader who's going to go in and say, if it were me, I would have, or if it was, and trying to dictate my way. That, again, like we talked about earlier, that's the groupthink mentality, right? So for me, it's about empowering over instruction, really listening to my team members, planting seeds with questions, right? Or putting them in a scenario where they have to answer a question or follow the scenario through. And it's really that coaching habit mindset. And I got it from this book, right? And it's such a great book. Honestly, I would recommend it to folks to read. It goes through the basis of the book. Honestly, it really starts with, here are 7 core questions that can allow you to be a better coach. Mm-hmm. And there's one that's called like the kickstart question. What are you thinking about? What's on your mind right now? Like those type of questions, right? One of the ones I do all the time. How can I help? Mm-hmm. Right? Another one is, and what else, to continue on the conversation, right? What else? What else are you thinking? Right? And it's that ability to tease out those conversations, drive folks to make their own decisions and make their own outcomes and come up with their own decisions. It helps build better leaders. And you guys know, mm-hmm. my philosophy has always been, my job is to teach folks who report to me how to take my job. That's my job. I need to teach them how to take my job. And doing this coaching mentality, this coaching structure,
because if you're
so
making all the
much.
decisions or you're micromanaging
To give folks the confidence to come up with decisions,
they're never going to learn on their own. And you want them to learn. You want them to have to make those decisions. You want to empower them to make those decisions because that's how they grow, right? Which has always been my style. I mean, some people kind of beat me up for it in some respects. They're like, "Oh, you're not micromanaging all this stuff." No, I don't want to do that. I want my team to be able to take the reins and make decisions, learn from those decisions, and become better leaders.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a leader within an organization, whether it's a business unit or you're leading an entire company, your job is to grow that business unit or that company. If you are the ultimate decision maker and your fingerprint needs to be on every decision, that's not scalable. How will that ever scale? It will never scale.
He did recommend some really good questions in here, and they go back to kind of the philosophy of this podcast, right? Problem, solution, values to some respects. Like, what is the challenge? What's kind of the core root of it? Just some really interesting questions when you think about how to work with your team to really understand, what are you trying to do here? How would you approach it? Let them come back with recommendations on how they would solve this. Get them in the mindset of how to think through these problems.
Right. Take the I out of the conversation. It's not about me as the leader. It's not about the way I would do it or how I would have it, or if it were me, I would have. Right. No, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed.
Well, that's it, gentlemen. That's all the articles for this week. I could have pulled more, but we try to keep it a little tight on this segment. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.